The case of Phineas Gage is one of the most fascinating and iconic in the field of neuroscience. It holds direct relevance to education and human behavior, especially considering the consequences we observe in those who suffer injuries to certain areas of the brain. Ever wondered why some students, children, or even co-workers seem impatient, whimsical, disorganized, or exhibit sudden changes in behavior? The answer might lie in how their brains function, specifically in the prefrontal area, which doesn't fully develop until around age 20. This brain area significantly influences our executive functions: impulse control, decision-making, planning, cognitive flexibility, and emotional regulation. Let's delve into the famous case of Phineas Gage, which vividly illustrates how an injury in this region can dramatically alter a person's personality and behavior. We'll also share some practical exercises you can do to strengthen your executive functions, based on the BAPNE Method, battery of activities for training executive functions. On September 13, 1848, while overseeing the use of dynamite for rock blasting needed in the construction of a railway in Cavendish, Vermont, USA, Phineas Gage experienced a chilling accident. A 3 centimeters thick, 109 centimeters long metal rod pierced through his face, entering through his left eye and exiting through the prefrontal part of his skull. The rod, along with some of his brain tissue, was found 22 meters away. It was a horrifying event for that time. Surprisingly, Gage survived and was transported for a considerable time in a cart, until he could be attended to by a doctor who saved his life. The first doctor to find him was named Edward Williams, and Phineas verbally told him, "Doctor, you've got your work cut out for you." Shortly after, a more prominent physician, John Harlow, arrived and managed to control the bleeding and stitch the wound. Gage remained semi-comatose for nearly 2 weeks and suffered a mild fungal infection, but eventually recovered from his physical injuries. Most intriguing from a neuroscience perspective was that, although he could stand, speak, eat, and perform simple calculations like adding 2 plus 2, his social interaction and behavior changed drastically. He became irreverent, whimsical, stubborn, impulsive, and struggled to control his emotions. According to accounts of the time, he was a completely different person from who he was before the accident, with a nearly opposite personality. These changes in Gage allow us to observe similar behaviors in students, family members, and in extreme situations, such as when athlete Valentino Rossi kicked Marc Marquez in 2015, Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear in 1997, or Zinedine Zidane headbutted Marco Materazzi in the 2006 World Cup final. All of this is closely related to our prefrontal brain region and the ability to control our impulses and emotions. Authors like Antonio Damasio and José Ramón Alonso have extensively studied this case in books such as Descartes' Error and The History of the Brain, respectively. Furthermore, a recent study published in the journal Science in 2022 by researchers from Stanford University used advanced neuroimaging techniques to map in greater detail the brain areas affected in Phineas Gage's case. The results suggest that the lesion in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex was crucial in the observed behavioral changes, affecting his ability to make rational decisions and control his impulses. Another fascinating study, published in 2021 in the journal Nature Communications, digitally reconstructed Phineas Gage's brain using artificial intelligence techniques and available historical data. This 3D reconstruction allowed researchers to more accurately simulate the damages caused by the accident and better understand how the injury in specific areas of the frontal lobe could have contributed to changes in his personality and behavior. Phineas Gage led an erratic life after the accident and died 12 years later, in 1860, at the age of 36. For a time, he worked in Chile as a stagecoach driver. Today, his skull and the rod that pierced it are preserved in the Warren Anatomical Museum at Harvard University, providing a fascinating study on our social behavior and how it relates to the stimulation of certain areas of the brain. On a practical level, you might wonder how to handle people who are whimsical, impatient, irreverent, and struggle to plan or study properly. Some experts suggest that rather than criticizing or punishing them, it's better to understand that their behavior may be related to incomplete development or dysfunction in the brain areas responsible for executive functions. The BAPNE Method, developed by neuropsychology experts, proposes a series of practical exercises to work on and strengthen these executive functions: impulse control, planning, cognitive flexibility, and especially attentional network, following the model of Zolberg and Mateer. These exercises are backed by scientific studies demonstrating their effectiveness in improving cognitive performance and behavior. A study published in 2020 in the journal Neuroimage found that participants who engaged in attention and working memory training exercises, similar to those proposed in the BAPNE method, showed increased activation in the prefrontal regions of the brain and significant improvements in their ability to maintain concentration and avoid distractions. Examples of practical exercises. To strengthen impulse control, an excellent activity is the classic game of Simon Says, but with rules that constantly change. This forces the participant to stay alert and avoid acting on impulse. Another highly recommended practice is guided breathing and meditation, which teaches techniques to calm down and not be carried away by intense emotions in the moment. A fun challenge is delaying a minor gratification, like eating a treat in exchange for a larger reward later, thus training the ability to postpone immediate desires. For planning, a very useful exercise is to carry out a long-term research project with a detailed schedule of tasks and deadlines. This helps develop organizational and time management skills. Puzzles and strategy games that require multiple steps are also excellent for practicing planning. Something more everyday, but equally effective, is meticulously planning a trip or an event, considering all details and possible setbacks. To work on cognitive flexibility, nothing beats role-playing games where you have to constantly change perspective. This trains the ability to see situations from different angles. Another enriching exercise is to find multiple creative solutions to a specific problem, avoiding getting stuck in a single approach. Lateral thinking exercises and problem solving also foster this ability to think outside the box. Lastly, for attention training, a highly recommended practice is mindfulness with objects, sounds, and movements, paying deep concentration to each stimulus. Visual and auditory sequence memory games are also excellent for strengthening sustained attention. An additional challenge is performing tasks while there are present distractors that need to be ignored, simulating real-life situations where we must filter out irrelevant information. These are just some examples of practical exercises from the BAPNE method, combining brain theory with playful activities. Training your executive functions can help you develop more self-control, organization, and mental flexibility, both academically and in your daily life. Remember, the brain is a fascinating and plastic organ, capable of adapting and changing throughout our lives. Understanding its functioning and stimulating it properly can help us reach our full potential and maintain a more balanced and healthy behavior. It's important to note that while the exercises of the BAPNE method are beneficial, they do not replace medical treatment for serious brain injuries or neurological disorders. In these cases, seeking professional advice is always recommended. However, for those who simply want to improve their ability to concentrate, organize, and control emotions, executive function training exercises can be an excellent complementary tool. A study conducted in 2019 by researchers at the University of Cambridge evaluated the effects of a cognitive training program based on exercises similar to those of the BAPNE method on a group of college students. The results showed significant improvements in their sustained attention, cognitive flexibility, and emotional regulation compared to the control group that did not receive training. Another interesting study, published in 2021 in the journal Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, examined the effects of executive function training in children and adolescents with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. After completing a program of exercises focused on impulse control, planning, and attention, participants showed improvements in their academic performance, behavior, and ability to regulate their emotions. These studies support the idea that by training our executive functions from an early age and consistently, we can develop essential skills for academic and personal success, such as discipline, organization, and the ability to make conscious decisions. In addition to the exercises of the BAPNE method, it's also important to adopt healthy lifestyles that promote brain well-being. This includes nutritious eating, regular exercise, adequate rest, and stress management. All of these practices contribute to the proper functioning of our brain and, consequently, to better control of our behavior and emotions. In summary, Phineas Gage's case reminds us of the importance of understanding and caring for our brain, especially the areas responsible for executive functions. By strengthening these skills through practical exercises and healthy habits, we can develop greater self-control, planning, and mental flexibility, enabling us to tackle life's challenges in a more balanced and successful manner.